There's a famous Chinese proverb that goes, "The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is right now."
Absolutely.
What do you think of that?
I think it's perfect because, I mean, we think about it in the garden all the time. There was a time where I thought, as soon as we bought this place, I want a great big huge maple tree right in the front yard. It's still not there. And if it
In
was
fact,
there,
he's ripped out all his grass and created a rock garden.
it ended up working out pretty good because how could I plant that beautiful rock garden? Well, I could have planted around the maple tree and it might have looked better. And no, it's all good. It's all good. But yeah, do it now.
Mhm.
Okay.
So I guess what we're trying to do is we're going to tie this back to personal finance in the sense of the best time to start anything was when you were younger. The next best time is to start now.
Matt, I think it's worth mentioning that I've had this conversation with a number of different people, and the whole issue was: are you more excited about your past or about the future?
Mhm.
Like, what's bigger? And I've met people who are in their 80s and 90s, and I ask them that question. They say, absolutely the future. I don't know how many years I got left here, but I'm excited for every day that's to come.
Mhm.
So I think that's a good mindset to adopt.
And I think here's the real problem. So many people procrastinate until they find the perfect opportunity, the perfect person, the perfect situation to start making money. And they often start thinking that they have a lot of time. And the problem is they never actually get started. I think there's many areas in life where we can make parallel comparisons of starting earlier and there being major benefits in the long run. So, what I'm going to say here is if you start earlier and you're consistent, you won't need to take as many drastic steps later on in life.
I think one of the great sages of the whole idea of starting now is Warren Buffett. He was in, I think it was like a university lecture hall, and they were talking about all kinds of things investment related. And one young man, he raised his hand and said, "Mr. Buffett, if you could trade places with anybody in the world right now," I think that's how it went, "who would you trade with?" And Buffett thought about it, looked at the young man, and he says, "How old are you?" He says, "23, sir." Okay. "I would give my entire fortune to trade places with you right now and all of the opportunities that you have." Um, so right now is the magical moment to get started.
So, I'm going to give some other examples of starting earlier and the impact. Fitness, definitely starting early, fitness and being consistent with it. You don't have to make as many drastic steps later on. And you're also actually better prepared to handle situations later on in life. Finance, of course, we're going to go into more of this. Here's a huge one that we love talking about: dental care.
Absolutely, yes.
How many times have we
Begin,
been told to floss our teeth?
yes, and begin now not drinking soda pop
Yeah.
and candy and cookies and sweets and processed sugar. Stop it. Just stop it. Right.
How many root canals have you had?
Let's not talk about that. Okay. I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for the benefits of dental implant.
hmm Okay. And here's another one: insurance. Starting insurance earlier. What is the biggest impact of that?
Well, especially with permanent insurance, where you can lock in your rates for life. You know, we're going to go through life while kids are dependent, and even when they're older, and we're always going to have a need for estate liquidity in most cases. There's got to be cash, and you can't just have it sitting in a bank account. Okay, you can't just keep a half a million, build up a half a million, or just have it sitting in cash because it just won't grow. But it's a great idea to have liquid cash available when a critical event happens, like a death. And that can be to pay taxes that are due. It can be to equalize the estate. A lot of people have built up real estate investments, rental real estate, vacation real estate, and they're not quite aware that when them and their spouse, if they're married, pass, that a big tax bill becomes due, and very often the estate, the children, are forced to sell that asset rather than retain it in the family.
Yeah, I
So,
would say not only real estate, but businesses suffer from
yeah,
that. Business owners
yeah.
suffer from that problem as
So,
well.
so I mean, the long and short of that is, it's. I think it's not a bad idea when you're really young to take care of current needs with your insurance, using not necessarily all term, but having a good chunk in like a term to 100, like a very low cost whole life type of policy. Nothing with, too rich of cash values or anything, but something that's going to give you an affordable premium that's locked in for the rest of your life, because you're always going to have a need for cash upon death.
Yeah. And this is a total side note, but remember everyone that insurance is insurance. It shouldn't be an investment.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's designed to do a job, and that is pay out tax free dollars to those that you love for pennies on the dollar. That's just how
Yeah.
it works.
So anyway, the whole point of this discussion is there are huge benefits to starting earlier, and when you kind of are younger and healthier, it's easier and more affordable to get insurance, and you don't have to worry about if you have an illness later on, if you qualify, all that. There's a lot of maybe a separate conversation, but
Yeah.
really huge benefits to starting earlier with your finances. Now,
The,
when it
the,
comes to
the, I mean, the younger you are, the greater the compound effect, right? It's just,
yes.
that's what's driving this whole thing, right?
And I guess let's just leap into the compound effect now, compound interest. You always love telling the story about the invention of chess and the power of compound interest.
Well,
Wasn't
I
it
don't.
Einstein? Einstein said something about the eighth wonder of the world being compound interest. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Einstein was a wise man.
yes.
Like, there's something out of this world about him. Like, there's
And
just a genius there.
speaking of wisdom, he probably played chess. So, chess. So, now's your
Yeah.
example.
Well, don't know how true the story is, but it's a great legend. The inventor of chess, I believe it was in India somewhere. I don't know. Okay, I'm just guessing here. Um, was so impressed the emperor with this incredible game that the emperor just offered him, like, just name your price. Like, you deserve a great reward for this. What can I do for you? And the inventor of the game said, "Oh, well, all I ask is that on this chessboard in front of you, you give me 1 grain of rice for the first square and double it every square. 2 grains on the next one, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, so on and so forth." And the emperor said, "Oh, that's all?" Absolutely. He told his treasurer, "Pay the man. Okay, go figure out how much that is and pay him what he's asking in rice." And a week went by, and the inventor of chess came by humbly to the emperor and asked, um, "Emperor, I don't mean to nag, but I have not received my reward yet." And the emperor was flabbergasted, and he called up his treasurer, started reaming him out, saying, "How come this man has not been paid yet for this great game of chess here?" And the treasurer was afraid. He says, "Emperor, I was afraid to talk to you about this because it's impossible to pay him." "What do you mean it's impossible to pay him?" "Well, you see, Emperor, by the time we got to the middle of the board, there was always already more rice than we have in the kingdom. And this would have bankrupted our entire empire if we gave him all that rice." And the solution that the emperor had was a simple one: off with his head. Not the treasurer, but the inventor. Okay.
Hmm.
So it's over 30, is it 32 squares on a game of chess?
I can neither
Yeah,
confirm
yeah,
or
32
deny.
squares. Yeah, it's that's actually, it was
Nope, it's more.
It's more, 64. Yeah. But
Yeah.
whatever, how many squares there is, um, it seems like a small number, but the compound effect is amazing. Of course, we cannot compound our investments by double, okay, every day or every month or every year. It might take a number of years. On average, using the rule of 72, for instance, if you have a 10% rate of return compounded over time, you should be able to double your money every 7.2 years. Or
Hmm.
conversely, if you had a 7.2% rate of return, it would take 10 years to double your money. That's sort of the rule of 72, right? But, um, but the compound effect does work well over time.
Yeah. I think while we're on this topic, another thing that people don't consider, because there's so much focus on rate of return, but there's not actually enough focus on your savings rate, especially when you're a young person. The easiest way as for a young person to double their net worth is just to, let's say they don't have a net worth, or it's all, sorry. Um, the easiest way would be, okay, we're going to cut here. And
We to pause?
no, um, the easiest way for somebody to increase their net worth is to increase their savings rate. And not a lot of focus is put on savings rate. A lot of focus is put on rate of return, which really factors in over the long run. But I think when you're first getting started, the whole idea of saving as much as you can and and experiencing some short-term pain for long-term gain is really important. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's the key. We invited a guest speaker once to a seminar we did many years ago, and he was one of the representatives from one of the investment managers we work with. And he was talking about a visit up into the interior, and it's logging country up there. And after the seminar, a young man, husky guy, right, comes up to him and said, "Listen, can I talk to you a little bit about what I've got?" And he says, "Yeah, sure." So he told him all about what he had saved up, and this was the guy maybe in his mid-20s, and he had like $200,000 in his RRSPs and non-registered accounts and stuff. And he says, like, I'm really concerned about the way I've been investing because it was kind of conservative, and he wasn't getting as much growth as he thought he should. And this fellow from the investment manager looked at him and said, can I just be honest with you? You've done all the heavy lifting already. You've done a ton of the heavy lifting already just by your discipline in saving. That even if you just get a conservative rate of return going forward, you're going to be miles ahead of all of your other friends that are living it up and waiting until their 30s and 40s before they start saving. So, and especially when you're younger, and even if you have your investments in something that's relatively stable, I don't know, high interest savings accounts, like a really conservative balanced fund, it's not a bad idea because very often when you're younger, uh, uh, the whole objective is let's save enough to buy our first house, right? And if you're heavily into equities and the market takes a tank, just at the time that you're ready to buy your first place, that's not fun. Okay. The discipline of actually saving money is key.
So, with that in mind, I think the biggest problem that is holding people back from starting a financial plan or getting their finances together at an early age comes down to four different things. The first is procrastination,
Mhm.
the second is overwhelm, the third is noise. There's a ton of noise out there. And the fourth is focusing on spending now and enjoying life now rather than later. So this might feel good now, but there's always a trade off between spending now and in the future. I think I always love that marshmallow experiment whereby um, they place a child in a room and they give them a marshmallow and they leave the room and they tell the child, if you don't eat this marshmallow and I come back and it's still on the table, I'll give you another marshmallow. And this has been a huge predictor of life going on forward. But it's that whole ability to delay that consumption of that single marshmallow so that you can get another marshmallow.
Well, and I think that if I'm correct here, they tracked these test subjects over time, and they found that the children who opted for two marshmallows if they waited, rather than one marshmallow, like I'm going to eat it right now,
Mhm.
that they were far more successful in life later on. Did they measure the level of success that they achieved compared to the ones that took the one marshmallow now?
They did, but I would need to look back at that study to see
Yeah,
the actual results.
yeah,
But what we're really trying to get at here is it might feel good now to spend all your money, but just think about how much sugar or how much we love sugar now. Sugar is amazing. There is a real cost to waiting, just like with sugar, there's a real cost to our health in the long term.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
in general, and maybe people might pick up that I really love Jocko Willink here because he has a book, Discipline Equals Freedom. But think about what happens when we have a little bit discipline now and we end up having more freedom later. So
Yeah.
again, it goes back to that concept that we were talking about earlier of would you rather make small sacrifices now and have to avoid making a huge sacrifice early or later, or would you rather to delay everything until you get smacked in the face and suddenly you need to make drastic changes,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Speaking of Jocko Willink, that's a scary dude.
Yeah,
I saw him a cover of a magazine once, and he is tough.
yeah.
But one thing about him that totally unrelated, but kind of related to this topic, the one thing that blew me away about him is that his major, I believe, in his studies was English, and I believe English literature. And when asked about, okay, you're a very tough Navy SEAL guy responsible for the lives of a bunch of really other tough guys, you know, uh, why English lit? He says, I'm an advocate for my team. And if I want them to succeed, and if I want to champion a certain mission or offer a path to promotion for any of these young men, then I have to be able to communicate a written proposal to my superior officers. And command of the English language, especially the written language, is absolutely essential. So it kind of is related here because Jocko did the work up front of investing in a capability that would allow him to be even more effective in
Mhm.
his endeavors later on.
That's a great transition, actually, because what have you seen in people who have developed financial literacy at a younger age and how that impacts them going forward? Like the people who are actually wanting to get started earlier.
Oh boy, I honestly think it relates to the four C's. Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach says it quite well. Is we in order to succeed in anything or establish a capability in anything, we have to begin with courage, a commitment. We have to make a commitment. We have to say, I am going to learn more about money. And the second thing is having courage. Okay, because in addition to making that commitment about learning more about money, uh, I, I have to realize it's going to take time. It's going to be maybe uncomfortable because I'm going to have to sacrifice some things I really want to buy right now, and so that's kind of a step of courage, and make and then after having gone through all of that, making that commitment, having the courage, going through the learning of financial literacy, I established so many capabilities in my savings habits, in the diligence in which I follow a plan, in keeping on track towards a goal, that, you know what, all of a sudden, with all of these capabilities, Matt, I'm feeling pretty confident. So commitment leads to courage, leads to capabilities, which increases our level of confidence. We have to go through that cycle no matter what we're pursuing. And
Mhm.
financial literacy is the same thing.
I think we all know the examples of these high profile athletes who make millions of dollars with their contracts, but then when they're done playing, they have nothing. Or for example, that lottery effect where people who have won the lottery, they actually end up worse than they were before they won the lottery, right?
Yeah.
Because they have never been taught really to they haven't been taught the financial literacy tools they need to understand their finances and to delay spending and to actually make smart financial decisions. So
You
that's
know,
why I think financial literacy is so important.
I forget which athlete it was, but I was listening to a program once, and he was saying that, like he's not all that upset when he's looking towards his end days in the sport. Like, there's only a certain degree to which you can go, and then it's time to retire, like in your late 20s. He says, I'm not at all regretting that, the oncome of that, because to me, this is just a step into what's next. So excellence in sports gives me all the capabilities and confidence I need for my next path.
Mhm.
And that'll give me more capabilities and confidence for what comes next. This is somebody who's thinking growth all the time, no matter what stage he's in.
Now, if we wait too long and we don't start early, we've also seen the impacts of this on people's goals. Number one, they might not ever reach their goals, or they might have to heavily sacrifice things in the long term. They might have to, for example, compromise their retirement spending. They might have to retire later. But by getting started early, you have frequent check-ins. You will be able, you will have more latitude to course correct and stay on path, and you will also be able to have more flexibility in life and won't need to take as many drastic steps. There's a lot of examples of this, but like think of a rocket journey, right? Imagine how much fuel it takes if a rocket had to course correct suddenly, rather than when they're earlier on taking a little bit of course correction, a little bit of course correction. Um, think about it, because if there comes the time also when it's also too late to make that correction. Any thoughts on that? So, by getting started earlier and having frequent check ins, you will be able to course correct and stay on path. You will also be able to have more flexibility in life and won't need to take as many drastic steps. So, Richard, what do you think is a good example to kind of illustrate this to people?
Well, we're not frequent flyers, but we've been a few places, and I'm thinking of that. Well, our trips to Europe, right? Direct to Frankfurt, and there's a certain path that the plane has to take. It kind of follows the curve of the Earth. It goes into northern Canada and up over Iceland, and ultimately ends up in Frankfurt. But along the way, the reality is that plane is always off course. It's never perfectly on course. The pilot's got the horizon set, and he's got coordinates set for tracking directly to Frankfurt. But every once in a while, a little wind buffets the plane around here and there, and it goes off course. And if they just ignored their instruments, before they know it, they'd probably be going, over the North Pole, or they'd be going like down into the US, and they'd have to spend massive amounts of energy, fuel, getting them back on course. But by monitoring the dashboard and continually checking in to see, am I on track? No, a little bit off. Okay, just slight adjustment here, slight adjustment here. They're always course correcting. It's the same thing with our finances. If we're not revisiting that plan and continually asking, okay, what do I need to do right now? Markets have taken a little bit of a hit. How do I course correct? Okay, well, we might have to trim expenses a little bit and then take advantage of these down markets and invest a little bit more. And things are really, really good. We've got a surplus. Doesn't mean we should blow it all, but maybe we should salt some away into some safe investments so that it can tide us over during down markets later on. So, yeah, there's always rebalancing happening and revisiting all the assumptions and triggering new strategies. An annual check-in is essential in moving forward.
Yeah, and I think we'll get more into that when we get to the end of the podcast, because there's a few brilliant examples that we want to talk about. But it can definitely be difficult to know when or how to start, to find a trusted source, especially with all the noise out there, and difficult to also put money aside now when it feels like there's so many things that we have to worry about in the here and now. What would you say would be a good starting point for people?
In terms of,
Getting started.
we've got a really great tool that we use. We've used a number of tools over time, but like all things, we've evolved our strategies, and this particular tool is our financial freedom blueprint, and it allows us to first of all focus through a really good conversation on what really matters. Like, what are the goals that matter? And we can often only do this through this conversation because on the surface, when we ask that question, hey, what what is it about financial freedom that's important to you? People might say, well, yeah, I want to have a pile of money. Okay, well, that's kind of a broad goal. And maybe it's not quite getting specific enough for us to focus on. So when you say you'd like to have a big pile of money, what is it about having that pile of money that's actually important to you? Well, it'll give me the confidence in knowing that I can continue to write checks and I may not have to worry about where it's coming from. Like I've got a good reserve that I can write checks from. Okay. So when you say that it's important to write checks for things that you want to spend money on it, what are those things that you would write checks for that are important to you? Well, I'd like to do more vacationing, with the family. Ah, so what is it about vacationing with the family that actually matters to you? And you see where it's going here, Matt. All of a sudden, we get to this place where we realize, whoa, I I just want to enjoy these years that we have together and grow stronger in our relationship. Well, you know what? It was never about the pile of money at the beginning.
Yeah.
It was all about growing stronger in our relationship as a family.
Yeah.
So through the conversation then and the financial freedom blueprint, we're able to uncover those goals that really matter and then inventory all of the assets that we have now, where we would like to be, all the cash flow we have now, where we would like to be, our financial security that we have now, and where we would like it to be, and then establish a course of action.
Yeah. I think one powerful thing you said there is, and many might be facing that noise of, oh, what do I do? There's so many competing opinions of where to put my money, and everyone's trying to steal my attention and my money. Not steal your money, but they're trying to get you to buy their stuff. Or they actually might be trying to steal your money, but you should watch out for those ones too. Um, but what really is important is that whole focus piece, that whole piece of when you uncover what's actually important to you, it's easy to focus on that and ignore the rest and stay on course for that stuff. But a great area for people to start is really by having a comprehensive financial plan. We always go back to this, but a comprehensive financial plan that covers all the 8 areas of your financial life. Now, I said 8 areas of your financial life. And most people would be shocked that there's so many areas of your financial life when they consider that a financial plan usually just involves investments. So there's a lot out there.
There is. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but as always, we love putting on this podcast for people to build their financial confidence and to engage with us and ask questions and stuff like that. So that's been such a joy for the two of us.
Matt, the thing about these podcasts and the conversation is, number one, I just enjoy doing this with you. I enjoy the fact that, we're getting a lot of comments from people saying, I really love that episode, on inflation, or I really love that episode on financial freedom, etc. And it's not that it's good for the ego. It's just we feel good knowing that people are learning, they're becoming more financially literate, they're becoming more confident. And I would say that next steps for anybody that that might be wondering, well, like, how can I make this really happen? You talked about a financial plan, putting together a comprehensive plan that covers all 8 areas of your financial life, and I think that's critical. But that's when we talk about the 4 C's of commitment, courage, capabilities, and confidence. That sounds too much like not only making a commitment, but it sounds kind of scary that I don't know if I want to do a financial plan with Richard and Matt, because like I don't want to make any commitments right now, because commitments and courage are good for other people. Like we admire that in other people. We just want the capabilities and confidence. So all I'm saying is people shouldn't be afraid to ask questions. And I think a great way to start is a simple, no strings attached conversation. It's our financial freedom blueprint conversation. And if you'd like to schedule a conversation about that, we'd be happy to. Like we love doing these things. So please reach out, schedule a meeting with us, and we can have a chat.
So to sum this all up, what does this look like when we start early? We have a few clients and I love meeting with them because we meet once a year, and what we do is we update everything, and then they see that they're still on path and they're happy. And then we just update their systematic plans, and it's basically a systematic plan if is just an automatic investment, and we're all happy and we go on. And the funny thing is when they start checking in with us about like, oh, can I buy a car? And we're like, yeah, like you've put in a lot of work early on, and you've you've done hard work, and you're disciplined and you're staying consistent. You can buy a car.
It's your money, and like I'm thinking of a few people like that, like a number of our clients, and we've been working together for literally a couple of decades. And I'm thinking also about that webinar that we put on, 10 steps to 10x your financial freedom. And maybe we can put the replay link for that in the show notes if we
Mhm.
could. Because it was a fantastic webinar, because it was literally going through 10 steps that allow you to 10x your financial freedom. And these folks that you're talking about, they've done that. Like they've more than 10x their financial freedom just through all of the disciplined steps in that ebook that we offer and in the webinar that we presented. So please check the show notes and link up to that webinar. You'll find it a fascinating session.
As always, thank you for the conversation, Richard. It has been uh, another episode of Storytime with Richard. So thank you, everyone, for your patience.
Thanks. Talk to you next time.